Okay, Mona, thank you very much for participating of the International Week at Wilkes. And I think it will be interesting for us to start by telling us where are you right now?
Well, thank you so much for having me here. And I visited your university, Wilkes, and it's really an amazing place. And you guys are really fortunate. So, Mona was born in Romania and in a smaller town, not in a big city. And that was a while ago. We're not going to count the years. And now I have been in the US for, I guess, more than 25 years, maybe closer to 30. And I think the interesting thing is what happened in between. Romania, that little girl that didn't know anything about any place in Romania, and then ended up in the US and other places.
How that happened? How did you get out of Romania and start to live in the different parts of the world?
Well, coming to the US, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with the movie of Eddie Murphy. Of coming to America. So it was
Yes.
some kind of I discovered long lost relatives and they invited me to come for a visit. I didn't know them, they didn't know me. I never thought about going to the US. Okay, I didn't know anything about it.
Mhm.
So I had no interest and I came and I really liked it. One of the issues, my English wasn't good. And my relatives spoke only English because this is the story of the US of America. Unless you're from another country, all people speak, in most cases, 99.9% is English and American English.
Yes. And so when you went to United States, you had a broken English or you didn't know anything?
I had a broken English, and actually, they made fun of me the way I spoke the English because, I said something that sounded like a bad word, but I didn't mean to say it. So I told someone to take a shirt, and it sounded like something else.
I,
Okay.
I can imagine.
So, interesting times. But when you are young and you're not exposed and not really afraid, so you make a mistake or you don't even know you make a mistake. Okay, it takes a whole different perspective.
And how old were you when you went to America?
I was in my 20s. I
Travis?
was in my 20s and I came for a visit and went back, and then I came and I basically decided to stay.
And
And yep.
did you study it in America or were you already graduated before you go?
Oh, no, no, no. I went to school in the US. My first year, I studied Spanish and communication,
Okay.
which looking back, these are two topics that you need English because learning a third language through a second language that you don't really know. Okay, so you have to translate it in your head, and communication has to do with the culture. You cannot communicate it if you're not really fluent in the language, meaning communications in terms of marketing and um, TV and all of these topics that they teach you in school. So my English wasn't good, and I didn't know.
And so what was the name of the course that you did? Was communication?
It was my major. My major
Major?
was communication and
Okay.
Spanish. And I remember that I had an internship at the TV station. So you can only imagine the struggle in the language and not really understanding, but on the other hand, wanting to fit in, wanting to learn. And when we're very young, we're like a sponge. We absorb information, or this is the way we should be. We should have the openness for
Yes.
that. And just so you know, this is another fact that our brain as humans is not fully developed until 26. So especially for young people, that's the time to do all of these things.
Yes, it's easier to learn, right?
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
And so you graduated, and after that, did you start working at USA, or how was after your graduation? How you became this international professional
Well,
person?
while I was studying, I got a job. I had to support myself. School in the US is extremely expensive. So I did work in a language center. And I used my skills of different languages to do translations, interpret, and teach. So I could teach German, French, I could do some translations, to basically support myself. So when I graduated, I decided to go for my master's degree.
Okay.
And I ended up doing my master's in international business. And while in school, I decided I want to own my own business. See, this is the core of the US, the entrepreneurship, but
Yes.
not knowing much about how to do it and how to go about it, which was interesting.
But you studied German, or to do that, or you had experience with German before?
I grew up, we spoke at home Romanian and German.
Oh, okay. Interesting. So you already grew up bilingual.
More than that, and I also studied at school French, and then I went to university Spanish, and all of these languages, but the core language is actually English.
English.
This is the common denominator around the world. People speak English. If you also speak their language, that's great, but you'll never be as fluent as a native.
Of course. Of course.
You know?
So that's the thing. You see that how English is important for the business world, right? It's
Sure.
the language of the business.
Definitely. And it's a language that connects us around the world. It is expected of any business, also in education, okay?
Yes.
To be able to collaborate, to talk, in a lot of the social media. If we want to understand what's going on in the world and connect and learn, see what other students at a certain age or other professionals are doing, it is mostly in English.
And you've been here already, right?
Yes.
You had the opportunity to teach here at Wilkes, and you had the opportunity to meet some Brazilian students, some students from our university, and probably you know that, especially if you compare it with the rest of the world, or the rest of the developed world, we still have a long way to go to be a bilingual country where people are fluent in English. And how was your experience here? What did you see, and what could you tell for the students in terms of if they are shy, if they don't want to speak because they don't want to make mistakes, how overcome that?
Well, you have to want to get ahead. It's much easier to communicate when you speak English, and it doesn't matter how well you speak it. It's about practice. And an example, when I came to the US, I took a course which was public speaking, or I had to speak in front of the class, and I chose a topic, and I knew everything about the topic. I had it in my head, and everything was great. One thing I miscalculated, and that is that I would have to speak in English, and I got up and I froze. I started to speak and I froze. And this is when I said to myself, this is never, ever going to happen again. Never, ever. So, yes, so we are shy, so we have an accent, so we don't have the precise words or the proper way to use the words. So what? It comes with experience. So, and I want to tell you that even in the US, I'm the one correcting grammar for American students. American born and raised student. So don't feel bad. And then in the US, don't forget, we have different kind of dialects and accents. And I'm talking the US, the English.
Yes.
People in the Midwest speak different from the people in the South and the West Coast. I mean, I can hear now that people talk differently. So there's nothing to be ashamed. You get your communication. Try to have these people speak in Portuguese, okay? And then we'll see how they do.
And I think one of the things that make people shy about that, or to not try to speak, is they are afraid to make mistakes. But I wonder that mistakes, there's no problem to make a mistake if you speak a language that you're not used to. It's important to try to speak and to try to communicate and make yourself be understandable in a different language. And how do the other sides view that? Even that you are speaking a broken English, how that is perceived?
It depends who. Usually people are helpful. People want to understand and want to communicate, and you make mistakes. Life is about making mistakes. I mean, what do we learn from? Do we learn from our success or do we learn from our mistakes? So we improve, but if you never practice, you will never get better. And that's part of it. And think about it. What is the worst thing that can happen? You make a mistake. Do you think people will stop talking to you because you made a mistake and you used the wrong word? I mean, this is never going to happen. So some people will correct you. Some people will help you. Some people will ask more questions if they didn't understand properly. Okay? And I think what happens, a lot of people are afraid because it comes from the insides. Maybe a certain way of upbringing, maybe a certain way of looking at themselves, maybe a certain way, sometimes our ego. So we make a mistake. I have it when I try, I don't, I speak English here. In the US, we mostly speak English. But when I go to a country that speaks German, I'm sometimes hesitant because I don't practice it and then I have to get back into it. So I make mistakes. Yeah, so what? So no one ever told me, oh, you made a mistake. I'm never going to talk to you again.
And I think that's important for our students to understand that you only is going to get better if you try, right? You're not going to be in that place where you know nothing, and then you're gonna right away excel, like be at the
Yeah.
top.
Yeah, and one way is to watch TV. I mean, not to watch TV, but listen to English on TV. Okay. And in many cases, these are news. I mean, the TikTok and all of these things, I don't even know if it's proper English. I mean, some of it, people make up words. Okay. But now that everything is on the internet, there is no problem to watch on YouTube, to watch on so many different places and improve the English.
Yes, I think too. And one final question is, could you tell us which countries did you live and how many languages do you speak?
Well, born in Romania, I lived in France, in Italy, for quite a while, in Australia, China, the US, of course, in quite a few places. I speak, and again, different levels because of practice. Again, so after I practice a language, for example, the German or the Spanish, I feel how my confidence grows and I'm fine with it. But when you don't speak a language for 2 years, you start forgetting, it's like a muscle. If you don't train the muscle, it's very difficult. So you can't run as fast, you can't walk as fast, you can't jump or whatever. And again, in business, it was extremely helpful to go everywhere around the world, from countries in Latin America, of course, Europe, um, some of the Gulf states, like Bahrain, just anywhere. And you can find someone that speaks English to some degree, even the most remote places.
Yes, and I think also you can read and you can get information directly from the source. And when you talk with people in their mother language, you can connect better with them.
Yeah.
Or uh, if you don't use a translator or things like that, or you need somebody to translate for you, you always lose something in that interaction if you're not talking directly with the person. So I think that probably was something that helped you, right?
Always. It wasn't even a choice. It wasn't something I thought of, for example, not to learn the language. Say, for example, my grandmother, may she rest in peace, she never learned. She spoke German and that's it. She never learned another language. She didn't, she was afraid. I mean, I don't remember, I was a little kid. And she was always like an outsider, okay?
Yes.
Even though she lived for many years with us and everything, she was always an outsider. And it's not good. It doesn't feel good that you can't really communicate and you always, so the thing is when you are young, okay, it's different, but as you grow up, as you want to get into a career and be promoted and excel and develop, that's part of development, of growth.
Yes, yes. I think that's a good way to see how things can be improved when you are able to communicate in a different language, especially in English, where it's, like we said, the business language. Because we're always thinking every time that you speak English, you open doors, the world become bigger. But this analogy that you just said, something like the opposite too. You get in, you are out, and now you can get in and be a part of a circle where if you don't know the language, you are just putting yourself out of that circle. I think that's a good analogy.
Yeah, it's part of life, and I see these things, and it's a matter of
Yes.
wanting to learn a language. And today, with all the social media and everything on the internet, we can do these things. We can even work on pronunciation. We can get new vocabulary. We can do just about anything, but it starts with motivation. It starts with us to say, I want to learn English and practice, just practice.
Perfect. Mona, I would like to thank you for giving your time to be in this International Week at our university. It was very interesting to hear about even that was briefly about your life. And for people that doesn't know, Mona is one of our professors. She works with us in an international course. So if somebody wants to know more, we're going to put some information in the description. Again, Mona, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you and have an amazing International Week, guys.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.